Welcome to the J.R. Hendrick Texan Gentleman, the podcast that deals with the early life of J.R. Hendrick. And now, being the part of J.R. Hendrick back to school, Jimmy and J.R. August 30th, 3 a.m. Jim wakes up thinking about the day ahead. This morning, around 5, he would take the family on one last boat ride. Fishing at 10. He would go to the Hollywood, fishing. At 10, he would go to the Hollywood casino for some light gambling and stay there until 3 p.m. 5 a.m. Central. Charlie Nation and I were swimming together at the Sibley when we got into an interesting conversation. Last night, I got an old blast from the past, Charlie. Who was it? Karen Crowder. You still love her? Wait a minute, Charlie. You know that I'm seeing Jennifer Bowers? Karen, she dumped me back in January. Therefore, we are way out of each other's league. She's even going to a different school from me. Jill's her, man. Jill Jennifer Bowers. Jennifer may have money and power, but Karen's got the hookups. But Karen's got the looks and the hookups. I grabbed his arm. You gotta watch what you say about her. Or really, whether or not we are together as a couple. Karen is my friend. And I won't get... And I will not screw around with. 5:30 a.m. Eastern. At breakfast, Christine gives an announcement to the family. But her advisor said that if she continued on a good track, she could qualify to be in honors English next semester. Christine and Forever had an animated conversation about the PE coach, Reverend Scottsdale. 6:15 a.m. Central. Meanwhile, on the lake in Baton Rouge, in the pontoon boat, the family is fishing for well over an hour now, and has 15 minutes left before returning home for a breakfast. Everyday breakfast. Cinnamon rolls or French toast. Before Ellen and Frank would hop in the car and depart from Baton Rouge to Wells Point. At 10, Jim was to meet with his longtime lawyer, Chris Culver, at the Hollywood Casino in Baton Rouge for a little business and R&R. which was to last until 3 p.m. Unfortunately, Chris Culver couldn't come just yet. 6:30 a.m. Central. Breakfast at the Crockett House dining hall was as follows: eggs, bacon, toast, cinnamon rolls, and orange juice. I sat with Charlie Nation, Brent Clark, and C.B. Coleman. You're only an extra, a flop on this campus. If you continue with Jennifer Bowers and not go back with Karen Crowder, Charlie Nation said. Jennifer and I are fine, and I'm done with Karen. Just saying, JR, you need to stay the hell with your father, Charlie said. Jerry Hendrick has a lot on his plate to ask to deal with your advice about his love life. J.R. Hendrick has a lot more on his plate than you can realize, and to deal with it, that's about your love life, Brent Clark said. Hold your tongue. Hold your tongue somewhere else. Charlie glared at Brent. Cut it out, Charlie, Stevie Coleman said. Hendrick passed out last spring because of stress like this about his love life. Now stop it. 6:55 a.m. Leaving the Crockett House dining hall, Brent stops me. Now please, don't tell me you're just going to let Charlie Nation with those corny jokes about your life. Brent said, please tell me that's not going to happen. It's fine. No, it's not, man. Charlie just keeps pushing Karen on you. When Jennifer Bowers has been the best girl for you, you know that. Now, Brent, look. My family can't stand Charlie Nation. My mom and daddy been telling me what friends I should have. That's gonna be in town keeping, and now I'm on me. I think I can manage some of my affairs on my own. But it's correct to say that your family worries about you with him, Brent said. "9:45 a.m. Eastern. Christine starts walking towards her English class when she decides to give her brother JR a dork call, making fun of his relationship with Jennifer Bowers. 10 a.m. There I was, intro to public affairs class. Dr. Harmon had just going through over the syllabus when Friedrich McKay walked up to the podium and made these pronouncements. People are less aware of the real thing that motivates their actions. Civilization is only limited by inertia. Can you tell me who said that? J.R. Brent protested. Brent, I want to write this down. I think it would behoove you to write this down also. That was Bernays. It was Bernays, founder of Public Affairs. McKay hands down some blue folders, one that I've already got. It gives us guidance on how to write the weekly fact sheets that may be presented in class on current issues in public affairs. Stating the periodicals that would be acceptable in class. 10:40 a.m. Central. Dr. Harmon pulled J.R. aside to talk, saying that he knew that he was a lot different from his father and his cousin. Said he knew that J.R. had more of a laid-back view of politics, but that he was thrilled that he engaged in class today. Outside the building, I bumped into Jennifer Bowers. Jennifer, I hope you remember that email I sent you this afternoon and at night. I'll pick you up. We'll go over to the IHOP for the Cheesecake Toastmasters dinner. I haven't forgotten. In fact, I think you're amazing. You're an amazing companion. That's a lot better than boyfriend. Meet me at 3:45. The University Center. 1:40 p.m. Eastern. At the Hendrick Mansion in Washington, D.C., Amy Kathleen is in the home chapel studying for her class today, History and Bible Theology. 1:15 p.m. Charlie had just come into the room, and I was watching, listening to the Rush Limbaugh show. I was changing my clothes to go out to class. And then to my big date with Jennifer Bowers. Kevin was also there in the room, and he saw me throw some clothes I had on the floor. Junior, I really wish you wouldn't throw your clothes like that. It's careless. You're supposed to be a gentleman of class, Kevin said. Oh, don't be too sanctimonious, K-Daddy and McDonald. I'm not throwing my stuff on top of yours. Yeah, but even changing, I think that's rather low class. Oh, I think that sounds Well, an October surprise for you. You should be happy that I'm dressing to go out after class with Jennifer Bowers. Other than that, I don't care. 1:30 p.m. Frank and Jan pull up in front of Mary Jane, and Betsy rushes out to meet them. Betsy, we haven't seen you in over 4 years since the family reunion. The year that happened after your daddy died, Uncle Frank said. I know. I wanted to come last summer, but Jim wanted to just try to keep more of an eye on JR while he was taking this trip with his friends all over the country. I hope that you and Jim would not move so far away, Aunt Jan said. Oh, hell, I know, Jan. It's only temporary, Uncle Frank said. Where is he, anyway? Hush, Jan said. That's something you don't want to talk about sometimes. I'm going to get personal business. Why don't you come on the porch? I'll get you two some cold drinks, and we can all sit and catch up for last time. 2 p.m. Class just began, and the TA handed us the syllabus silently, telling us to read on our own. We waited for just a few minutes, and then a tiny, slender, doll-looking brunette made her way to the front of the classroom and sat down near the pulpit. And she said, "Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken favorably." Absolutely. Unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto thine own handmaid. Boaz welcomed I guess that's what the Bible calls it, a kinsman redeemer. Gerald said, engagingly Simon. That is correct. It is from the book of Ruth, which we plan on studying later on this semester, later on this month. So be ready. 3:30 p.m. With me inside the truck, Darren drove it up to the student union building, and there was Jennifer Bowers. Hey, good to see you, JR, Jennifer said, hopping inside the truck next to me. Let's have some fun. Good to take a break from the monotony and have some fun. I want to know the truth. Are you thinking about having us be engaged? I mean, I know your father probably doesn't approve, and neither does my father. It doesn't matter, Jennifer. We can make the most of ourselves. Darren drove us to the restaurant where the meeting for Cheesecake Toastmasters is going to be held in the back of the restaurant. We ordered some drinks until it was time. 5 p.m. At Swainfield Ranch, Elizabeth is relieved to find Thomas home. Tonight was one of her favorite meals. Chicken and dumplings, a delicacy that her father, as a farmer, brought when she was 12, at the height of the Great Depression. 5:40 p.m. At Mary Jane, the family is having some cocktails, some alcoholic and some non-alcoholic. The non-alcoholic was for Frank and Jan. So what happened like this, Jim said. I was climbing down from the top rung of the engine room and the rig, when all of a sudden some of the scaffolding fell, and I slipped not too far from the ground, 40 feet in the air, and I broke my leg. It was in Big Spring, but they managed to get the ranch chopper to get me to Alliance Hospital in Midland. JR. He was supposed to represent the prep school student council at the fall dance. But his mama said he needed to be with the family. Yeah, I remember that you went to surgery for the next day at Midland. They sent you home, and then they had to do another surgery in Big Spring. JR, poor kid, was spending time away from the ranch, staying with his Uncle Carl and Grandma Mary, and he would cry every night. Wouldn't hardly eat because he missed his daddy so much, Betsy said. For 6 months, I ran the oil company from the ranch, and I saw how it affected my kids. And so I found out a man that was responsible for the scaffolding, and some dudes in the railroad commissioner named Mike Christopher. He was responsible. He had it in for me. Turning around now, I assume I'm damn sure I was able to get a net worth of $70 million for each and every one of us. And now, it's up to $80 million. All because I sued that company that belonged to Mike Christopher. Frank told me he got calls similar. Saying that JR would see his daddy in a wheelchair around Christmas, and he would cry because he thought of that meant more time away from the ranch he loved so much. Yeah, the tragedy is he don't want it no more, Jim said. That boy will change his mind. He's got too much country in his blood, Uncle Frank said. 6 p.m. The Cheesecake Toastmasters meeting was underway. Tracy Smith is club president. JR is vice president of PR. Dave Smith is club secretary. Blink Clark delivered the speech as a guest. Jennifer Bowers was vice president of education. 6:30 p.m. At Mary Jane, the family sits down to chicken fried steak and eggs. Uncle Frank, however, had to make succotash. Had to have succotash made by Aunt Jen to help work with his heart disease. Grandma Elizabeth's side of the family knew how to make succotash, and this would help with 2 family history problems that we had: heart disease and cancer. 6:50 p.m. With a meeting over, JR and Jennifer sitting IHOP, having a few drinks before checking out and leaving. "This is fun, my love," Jennifer said. "Like the night we met." "Praise Jesus," JR said. "You know, Charlie Nation is so wacko, but I like your friend and roommate Dave Smith. You really make him almost like something of yourself. That internship has really turned you into something good. I really care about you. I mean, if I'm into come up with someone else that's a public affairs genius, I'm sure it's you, Jennifer. I'm gonna say this, my baby. You have a good head for business. I know it's gotta be somebody like you. 6:55. In the car, JR and Jennifer talk. "Looking great, baby," Jennifer said. "Thanks, honey. Same goes for you." "Now look, here, I don't want to marry you because of the money. You understand?" That's a extremely foul reason to get married, honey. August 31st. 11:05 a.m. Central. Meanwhile, M asked me a theory. Of course, Dean Settee made this announcement. Today, we are going to be studying media effect theory. But I want to say, as you've seen on the syllabus, that by September 16th, you'll be required to write and turn in your term paper on what is your mass media theory. Now, I would like to see at least 3 sources, particularly from periodicals, and not from talk radio or a book. Can you do that? "11:30 a.m. in Baton Rouge, Jim and Marlena are having lunch in a hotel restaurant back room. Jim tells her that as far as the vacation is fine, except that he's bored with his marriage with Betsy. But the meeting was beyond just the usual emotional affair. Jim was concerned about his son JR's interest in personal development and asked Marlena to help at times, especially when JR began his internship next summer. 11:50 a.m. After class, Jennifer Bowers stopped me and asked me, could we have a study date later on tonight at the Center for Public Affairs Library, dinner and ginger ale. I then rushed off to the platter at Crockett House, had lunch with Kevin McDonald. A double burger with chili fries. 1:05 p.m. Jim arrives at Mary Jane and learns that Walt and Faye Lipscomb would be flying in on Saturday morning. He rushes past everyone to go inside to call the private tutor he assigned for Christine, concerned about how he was starting high school. 1:25 p.m. At the Public Affairs Library, I made a phone call. Someone in Alexandria, Maryland, to sell some gold, for which I would get $7,000 check. My first plan was to celebrate tonight while studying with Jennifer Bowers. 3 p.m. Central. I'm at the Center for Public Affairs on the first floor office of Dean Settee. Now, Hendrick, I have to say that you have a very keen mind. Mass media theory is a very impersonal course. Yes, sir. Pretty polite compared to some of the other kids that I teach. My courses, I specialize in corporate affairs and advocacy. Your advisor, Dr. Harmon, and I have collaborated together on several papers. What's your career goals? To be a journalist or a congressman? Maybe more likely. Maybe towards being a congressman. But I don't know yet. I know my daddy wants me to work as an advocate for his company. Jerry, she wears some multiple hats first before you go to work for your father. Media reputation with him It's very colorful. He went along to talk to me about the paper. I'd like to make an apology. Obviously, with your keen intellect, you see things these other kids don't see. They don't even know anymore what a periodical is. I guess I should be better off taking grad school or law school students. It's going to be fun engaging you in class. Let me tell you something. A little bit about myself. Since you're the only kid that visited me in office hours out of class this week, I'm about Catholic. I'm more moderate than most. I won't say my political party. I am opposed to abortion and the death penalty. I voted for George H.W. Bush in 1988, but against him in 1992 because of the Iraq War. I'm not going to support George W. Bush as governor of Texas. 7 p.m. at the Center for Public Affairs Library. There is a group of 13 students sitting together, studying public affairs, particularly the advocacy section of the training tomorrow. 9:30 a.m. at the Public Affairs Library. It's been a few hours, and I have a concluding conversation with Jennifer. That was a long study meeting, Jennifer said. Yes, it was. Thanks for the ginger ale. I guess we better celebrate. You know, Gerard, law school sounds very interesting, but I don't think I'd be prepared for it if it weren't for studying public affairs, especially the principles. What fascinates you? Well, there's a syllabus and the fact sheets, requirements for Mr. Harmon, Mr. McKay. Also, there's advocacy. My guess is that learning advocacy is what's going to help me become a successful lawyer. And you know, I think when your father, Jim Hendrick, time is coming. He's getting bored with his vacation. And he wants to return to public affairs. You're very perceptive. You have what they call an inquiring mind. Why, JR, you love inquiring. I love inquiring. Now, I guess you wouldn't read about my daddy in the papers. Yes, your daddy doesn't mind going ahead, toe-to-toe with Bill Clinton. And that should interest you. You're one very smart lady. All I want is you to keep courting me. You know what's right. I care for you. You're very attractive. I think I wouldn't mind spending a lifetime. Kara, let's go hit the shelves. You're right, it's getting late. Taking the tech shuttle police van JR rides with Jennifer back to Coleman Hall so he could see her inside the dorm room. And then he hops right back on that same shuttle and goes back to Gordon Hall for the night.